Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this fantastic Saturday morning here on Open Door. So my name's Richie Clapson, and I'm here with the other half of Property CEO, Mr. Ian Child.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you're well.
He's so happy, isn't he? He's so happy.
I'm so happy. It's Saturday. All good.
Guys, great to have you here. And just in case this is your first time and looking down the list, there are a few names which I don't recognize. So I'm assuming for a few of you, it is your first time. So let me let you know what you've let yourself in for on this wonderful, sunny, hot Saturday morning. Well, our aim is to give you 45 minutes of non-stop positivity. We started these shows back when the pandemic hit, and originally we called them support sessions. It was all about just providing positivity. Once we've morphed into the Open Door show, and it's something we're going to continue for some time, the positivity element will constantly remain. So whatever else is going on in the world, this is always a positivity zone. And it's all set around the theme of business and property development. Isn't that right, Ian?
Certainly is. Richie and I run a company called propertyCEO, and basically our day job is training people how to become successful small-scale property developers. Of course, many people like the idea of developing property, but they often worry that it's going to be quite risky, quite complex, complicated. So basically our job is to give them the support and the training that they need to do it as safely and as successfully as possible. We also think that there's an amazing opportunity lying just around the corner right now, which is going to create a lot of opportunities and a lot of wealth for developers moving forward. So we kind of wanted to help people find out all about that, and of course to see if property development might be a good fit.
That's right. And, you know, guys, look, there's a lot of stuff going on out there. We're about to head into a recession. But, you know, the interesting thing is I was chatting to someone on the phone the other day and they said, oh, recession, it's a bit tough, isn't it, for guys like you in property? I said, no, the opposite. In development, this is a fantastic time because you're buying in a recession. And in a few years' time, 18, 24 months, you're delivering your product into a market that's re-risen. It's perfect. This is a once, probably, certainly I'm never going to see this opportunity again in my lifetime, and many of you won't. So it is a fantastic opportunity that recession creates, but only for those that seek it out right at the start. If you follow the crowds and wait for it to settle down, that's not going to happen. So guys, these shows are all about serving up advice, predictions, guests. We have a guest on today. We'll introduce him in a minute and give him a pretty good build up, I'm sure. A bit of training, I guess, in terms of what we do. But above all, it's about having a bit of fun. So we're happy to take questions. I always say there's no questions, there's no show. So thankfully, you guys, you do supply us with questions. And please put them in the chat box as we go through so we can pick those up and ask the guest. Or, of course, you can ask questions to ourselves as well. So let's get started. A few shout outs, a few of you all coming on today. So great stuff. Good to see you all. Chris is on, Trish, Roma, Clive Pardeep, Ranjit from Property Investor News is on today. Ranjit actually said, he said in the notes this morning, which is really polite, Ranjit. He said, where was his comment? Let me have a look at it. He says, good morning, you lovely people. Ranjit from Property Investor News. I mean, you guarantee yourself a mention if you call us lovely people, don't you, Ian? Absolutely.
Well, he's even put a picture of a cup of coffee on there, which is almost doubly guaranteed to get you a mention on this show.
I don't like coffee, but I know you do, Ian, so that's really good. But Debs and Richard is on. Dan's on. Good morning, Dan. Gavin. Charlotte's on. PK's on. Good morning, PK. I'm not even going to try and pronounce your first name. PK, I'm going to run with that from now on. Lynn's on. Malthouse Barn, someone has signed on. And those that are regulars here will know that that is one of our students. His name's Bob. He's very interested in agricultural buildings, and he comes up with some very childish name each week, particularly on a Saturday. We give him a mention. So Morehouse Barn is actually Bob from the Midlands. Edward's on, Michael's on, Raj is on, Alison's on, Rob's on, Dave's on, Josh is on, Sammy's on, Helen's on, Pete's on, Will's on, Ranjinder, Adir, Karen's just joined us. Excellent. And a few little comments in the chat box. Debs and Richard, as always, they seem to have their breakfast whilst this show is on. And they said, good morning to you both from a wet and windy south coast. Looking forward to fun formation. In brackets, she's tried to explain that is fun and information packed into 45 minutes. And they're having an Italian spice sausage ciabatta today, which is excellent. I love that.
That marks a bit of a sea change there in the diet on the south coast.
I think so. Dan says good morning. Gavin says good morning. Trish says good morning. PK says good morning. Oh, Morning, chaps, says Edward. You always got to mention if you put something in here. Alison says, morning, chaps. Mrs. P here this morning. Dom on catch up later. Alison, we'd much rather have you than Dom any day of the week. Dom, to be honest, gets on our nerves a little, but we're not going to mention that too much. And PK says, with the new TPD, oh, that's a question. He's already got a question, has he? How feasible is it to build upwards? There's a question in straight away. Absolutely.
No messing about.
Karen says, good morning from a wet and windy Manchester. Yeah, Karen, it is a bit miserable up there. And someone said on here, where's that little comment? Because I said it was wonderfully sunny here. Someone talked about it not being so sunny where they were. Yeah, good morning, gents, says Pardeep. Not so hot here in Birmingham. You must be the lucky ones in Southampton. Well, to be honest, actually, Pardeep, I'm in a studio. I haven't got any window, so I'm just positively thinking it's going to be sunny out there. That's the best I can do. And I see VJ, Anthony, Nick's just joined us, so welcome. Got a good show coming up today, haven't we, Ian?
We have. You're going to introduce our guest?
Shall I introduce him? Did you want to introduce him, or shall I?
No, I think you can introduce the guest. You're quite good at
that. Okay, excellent. Well, look, guys, as always, we get whatever guests you want. This is your show. You're the Property CEO family. You're our CEOs. If you're not a CEO yet, then you've got time to be one and capitalize on these opportunities. So, you know, welcome. So we always try and build our guests up. We've got today Alec Smith from Artisan Surveyors, soon to rename his company, actually, to just give it a more wider explanation of what he really does. And you asked us to bring someone on who could talk to you. The request was about asbestos and Japanese knotweed. So several of you actually requested that. So we thought, let's bring on a specialist. Let's bring on an expert that can talk about all these very technical subjects, because they are complex. And guys, these can make the difference between you making a project work or actually a project failing. Maybe you're going to give a project away. You're going to pass it by because you think it's too complicated. And so we seeked high and low to find probably what we wanted to find, what we felt would be the best in the country, the guy with the most experience, or the girl with the most experience, but ultimately it was a guy with the most experience in the country about asbestos, contamination, Japanese knotweed, and all things environmental. So we got Alec anyway. So Alec was available as always. So Alec is here on the show today. Alec Smith from Artisan. Alec, are you there? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Good morning.
Excellent. Can you switch your camera on for me, my friend?
Ta-da.
There he is. Alec, good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing, Ian? How you doing, Richie?
I'm very good, very good. We just gave you a build-up. I don't know if you heard that, but it was a big build-up. So
never expected anything less from you, Richie. Yeah, no, thank you for that.
No problem at all. We always like to,
as always.
But joking aside, Alec is. I've known Alec a while now. He does seem to know his stuff. So guys, throw some questions in and we can throw them at him today. But Alec, before we start, I mean, one thing that Alec may not say, but Alec is actually a developer as well. So guys, this is really good that you've got someone on that actually has a business on this environmental side, but does develop it himself. So he really gets what you guys are about. Alec, do you want to just introduce yourself, your company, and a bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Richie. So so I started back in 2005. I'd been working for another asbestos consultancy at the time, and I realised that I think that my entrepreneurial side was coming out, and I didn't really enjoy working for other people and being told what to do. So I started out. I sort of left, started up in a spare bedroom, and started up Artisan. So yeah, way back in 2005. Goodness knows where all that time's gone. And the company's really kind of built, and we've helped a lot of clients. So over the years, as Richie says, at the moment we're Artisan Surveyors. As Richie points out, at the moment we're going through a lot of growth and development within the company. So, and we're changing from Artisan Surveyors to Artisan Environmental, which is a current rebrand and a name and brand that we feel is better kind of says what we do on the tin, with the range of services that we specialise in, that we help clients with. And so myself and my awesome team help developers, investors to really kind of sort of stay out of trouble when it comes to land contamination and yeah, asbestos in buildings. So that's kind of really what we do. And as you say, Richie, I also love property and have been involved in investing and more kind of recently developing and bigger sort of developments. Well, relatively recently. So I've got that experience on the property side, as you say, and that kind of really helps us to understand kind of what our clients need and how we kind of incorporate what we do sort of into schedules of works and kind of look at that bigger picture for understanding the investment and the development and construction side of things.
Excellent. And it's interesting seeing you here this morning, Alec, because Alec was on I think it was Facebook Live earlier this week, weren't you, with three ladies? They're called the Property Angels, I think, aren't they? Is that right?
That's right, yeah. So Sarah, Sam and Karen. Yeah.
He's being interviewed there, and I have to say his hair's calmed down a little bit this morning. He had a bit of a Mohican look on, didn't he? So that looks a bit better. But I think there's almost a suggestion. I think I pointed it out to Ian, and Ian said in the week, he said, well, you might better sort of combine the two haircuts, and actually I could probably put a bit of Alex's down the middle of mine, and I'd have a full head of hair or something.
Yeah, we don't like to mention hair too much on the show at the moment, but it was noted that between the two of you, you actually have one haircut. They respectively suit you both.
Yeah.
If any graphic designers out there sort of want to take a picture of both of us and morph it, please don't. That would be hideous.
We're not going to do that. Can I ask, as a sort of starter for 10, Alec, if we start maybe with asbestos. What is asbestos? Why is it dangerous? And also there's kind of different types of asbestos, isn't there? Can you just give us a little bit of an overview?
Yeah, of course. So some people think that asbestos is a man-made material. It's actually a natural mined silicate mineral. So it's mined as an ore kind of all around the world. There's various locations that you get larger, as with any mineral, larger quantities of the material. So it's never mined here in the UK, but there were various areas of South Africa, Canada, Russia, China that have quite large deposits of asbestos ores. And it's mined from the ground, and it's a fibrous mineral, so it's sort of collected together once it's mined and pulverized with machinery to break apart the ore and release those asbestos fibers, which are then used in the construction industry, or were used so in the UK in lots of different materials. It has really great properties that you don't really get with any other material. It has high tensile strength, chemical resistance, fire resistance, thermal resistance, acoustic resistance. So there's a whole host of properties that the material has that meant it was what's called the wonder material. It's really was great, which I think, despite knowing the hazards of asbestos, I think that's why we carried on using it for several decades here after the dangers were known. As you say, there's different types. So the three main types, the most common types that were utilized in the industry in materials were brown asbestos, which is amosite, blue asbestos, chrysidolite, and white, which is chrysotile. And it was imported as generally of the loose fibers, and by quantity, white asbestos was by far the largest quantity that's been imported into the UK, up into kind of 90% by volume. And the brown and blue is classed as sort of technically the more dangerous asbestos, although all asbestos should be treated as dangerous and dealt with, according to all of the legislation and guidelines. And brown and blue was generally added to materials that so things like pipe insulation, thermal insulation, and a fire resistance board called asbestos insulation board. And these tended to be your higher risk materials, which was largely because they're friable, they fall apart very easily, and they release the fibres into the air, which is when they become dangerous. So I'm sure most of you out there, all of you have heard that asbestos materials are generally safe if they're in good condition and in situ, and it's when they're damaged or in bad condition and broken, or certainly drilled, cut, and if you're using power tools on there, that's going to sort of whip up the air and damage that material. But that's when those fibres become airborne and you can breathe it in, and that's when it's dangerous. It's a carcinogen that causes damage in the lung and builds up, causing various nasty diseases and cancers over time.
Brilliant. No, thank you, Alec. Much appreciated.
Good stuff. So there we go, guys. A bit of an intro in terms of asbestos. We've got questions coming in. Alex, I've got a question here from Chris. Chris, good morning. Chris says, what is the key relevant asbestos legislation and how do I comply with it?
Morning, Chris. Good question. So the main legislation, which falls under the General Health and Safety Act, but the asbestos specific legislation, is called the Control of Asbestos Regulations 2012, and you can download a free copy of that legislation and sort of user-friendly guidance document off HSE Books website, which is a great resource actually. So the HSE Books website has all of their guidance documents and actually simplified documents that you can, as I say, download for free, that kind of talk you through step by step sort of the key ways to comply. The key part of that regulation or that legislation is Regulation 4, which is the duty to manage. So that's the duty that puts the responsibility on you or on a number of people that would be called the duty holders under the legislation to safely manage asbestos materials in the property or the properties that you are in charge of. So you have a legal duty to protect yourself, your staff, workers coming to site, and members of the public. So anyone that could come into your property or your land and expose themselves to asbestos materials and fibres that could be released from those materials. To make sure you're complying with it, it's always going to be a survey, really. So we used asbestos in the UK up until the year 2000. So generally, if you know that building or part of the building was constructed after 2000, from 2000 onwards, then you'll find it's not or shouldn't have any asbestos in there. But anything 99, pre 2000, should legally have an asbestos survey before you do any work, certainly, and there's different types of asbestos survey. The general management of the building, so if you're not going to be doing any work, and the legislation here really applies to commercial property. There's certainly much more of a focus on commercial and management of commercial property. All commercial property should have an asbestos management survey, where we would look at all of the materials, would go through with a fine-tooth comb without knocking the place apart. So we're looking at all of the surface fabric and everything, all of that building fabric that we can access without making holes or causing damage, which will pick up the vast majority, if not all, of the materials in general. Samples would be taken of anything suspect, so everything that we as a qualified surveyor, an experienced surveyor, would know is the material that they use to put asbestos in, which is a lot of materials. It's not just sort of pipe insulation and the handful that you may have heard of. It was used in over 3,000 different products and materials, so you can find it all over the place and in sort of used in lots of weird and wonderful ways, as well as all of the key main materials that you may find in a property. There's not that. That would be the main survey type for management. But then for development, you need to have a refurbishment and demolition survey, where we would go into the fabric, and wherever you're doing any any work, we would intrusively check in below floor voids, above ceiling voids, inside boxings, and check within that fabric that wouldn't have been checked at a level from that initial survey, just to find all asbestos and make sure that you can then make sure that that's being either removed or managed properly and won't be exposed during the works.
Excellent, Chris. Hopefully that answers that. I think in terms of the legislation, I think I'd always say, Alec is an expert in this thing, Chris. Yes, and whilst good to do some background reading, have some knowledge, download some content. We always say to people, to our students particularly, is keep up to date with the professionals. If you can build a relationship with someone like Alec, and these guys will look after your interests. So presumably, Alec, people can we give you details at the end of the show, but people will reach out, and if people are a little bit uncertain about this legislation, you can help them on that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're always happy to have a chat. And if you're looking at a property and you need to look at the best way to approach it with regards to phasing any checks for land contamination, for asbestos in the buildings, then happy to have a chat and let you know the best way to do that.
Great stuff. Chris, hopefully that's answered that. And I think there was a question in from Amir. Amir, I think we probably answered your question. So we got 2 out of 1 there, which is what are the different types of asbestos survey and when are they needed? So we talked about a visual and an intrusive. Ian, have we got another question there we can fire at Alec?
We've got one that I think is sort of lightly connected, which is from Helen, and she asks, how easy is it to spot asbestos or contamination on a site visit? And when should I bring in an asbestos consultant?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, okay. So there's as I said, a whole host of different materials, lots and lots of different materials. Some of them are obvious and some of them aren't. And that stands for asbestos materials in a building and on a site, as well as contaminants as well. I guess with contaminants that may be kind of on or in the ground or other things, then if you've got an oil drum on the surface that you can see is kind of fallen over and you can see a big patch of oil, then that's going to be obvious. But what's below the ground, so you don't know, unless you have a phase 1 desk study through to looking at what the historical use of that site has been, what industry's been there, what's happened to that site since it was first used, since it was a field, then you just don't know. And how much you do kind of depends on what you are doing. But generally, with certainly the asbestos in the buildings, the legislation sort of says that if you're doing work on the building, then you legally need to have a survey just to find out and make sure everyone's protected and safe. But yeah, there's materials, there's asbestos materials that are obvious, like Artex and vinyl tiles and the stuff that will visually be apparent. But then there is a whole host of materials that aren't so obvious. It comes in roofing, felts, bitumen products, damp-proof courses, and all of those like lower risk materials. But even the high risk materials like insulation board, they used to chop that up into little pieces, use it as packers, put it in door frames under windowsills, and it literally could be anywhere within the fabric. So there's generally lots and lots of places where it even takes a qualified and experienced surveyor quite a detailed survey to find it and uncover the stuff.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alec. Helen, I hope that helps.
Helen's question as well was when should I bring in an asbestos consultant? I'm just picking up that bit, Alec. At what stage should people be contacting you to come and have a look at a project?
Yeah, so I think as with any of the other professionals, so sort of like with Mike from SC Architecture a week or 2 ago, said that we're contacting your architect. It's better to do that as early as possible when you're looking at the feasibility and the potential of a project. As I say, sort of happy for you to pick up the phone to me or to us and have a chat. And the earlier that you can do that and let us know kind of what sort of property you are looking at, then the earlier we can kind of steer you in the right direction of what you're going to need to do. We can discuss what your plans would be for that property and let you know what you're going to need to do. It is a tricky one sometimes. I mean, in vacant properties it's fairly straightforward. If it's occupied, if you're buying an occupied building, it's a bit more tricky to get that schedule and the order of things right, because obviously due diligence wise, you want to reduce your risk as much as possible. If there's lots of asbestos in there that's going to cost you tens of thousands of pounds to remove as part of your project, then you want to know that before you buy it, ideally. But if you're buying a building that's occupied or it's not going to be vacated and until exchange or near exchange, or then generally we can't go in and do that intrusive level survey, because we can't go and rip a building apart when there's people in there. But that also stands for unoccupied as well. If you've not bought the place yet, 9 times out of 10 the vendor isn't going to want you to go and make a load of holes. So that intrusive survey you'll generally have to wait till later. But we'd always recommend you do a management survey as part of that due diligence as early as possible, because that is, for the sake of £200, £300, £400, if that's going to save you 50, 60, 70,000 pounds in asbestos removal later on that you didn't know about before you bought the place, it's going to be worth knowing. So in that scenario, we can look at a staged survey. We could do that management survey prior to purchase, and then top that up to that refurbishment and demolition survey once you've purchased it, which has a bit of an economy of scale as well. We're not going to charge the full price of an R&D if we've already done that previous management survey. Yes, it's going to cost you a little bit more than one or the other, but it won't be the cost of both of those surveys, because we've already done some of the work on the management survey prior to purchase. One thing with scheduling is a lot of one of the mistakes with that is leaving it too late before the works, because if asbestos is uncovered, then if it's a high risk material, licensed material like insulation and insulation boards, firstly you've got to, once you know it's there, you need to get contractors in to quote to remove it. Once you've appointed a contractor, then they have to give a 2-week notification period to the HSE before they can start works, and then it may take them 2-3 weeks depending on how much material is in there and what they need to do. So you could, if you're doing that survey the week before you're planning to start works, then all of a sudden you could have a 4, 5, 6 week delay on your hands, which could have a big knock-on effect and impact on your schedule of works and other contractors that you've got lined up. So the sooner that you can get that survey done and make sure you allow a window for the survey and any asbestos remedial works prior to refurb or demo, the better.
Okay, so Helen, as soon as Debs and Richard put a couple of questions in, but they said, wow, Helen's question answered much of my question. Didn't realise it could be in so many places. So yeah, hopefully that's picked it up. I mean, she did say, where's the most likely places? Could you give us 3 of the most common places? Just reel off 3 quick common places, Alec.
Yeah. So externally, asbestos cement is is probably one of your widest used materials. So asbestos cement on the corrugated roof sheets that you'll get on garages and sheds and things like that. Inside, luckily it's the lower risk materials that tend to be the more common ones. So probably what you'll visually see as kind of common ones would be Artex, so textured coatings on ceilings and walls, and vinyl floor tiles. That's probably 3 of the what you'll see as the biggest bulk of visually apparent material. Luckily, the asbestos insulation board, thermal insulation, is less common, particularly in residential property, but it certainly was used. So we do commonly find it through those higher risk materials. Tends to be only through to properties through to sort of the late 80s with the higher risk stuff, thankfully. But anything kind of prior to that, and then anything prior to 1999, then asbestos cement everywhere.
Cool. Okay, excellent. Debs hopes that answers that. Charlotte just said, in my own property, we found the top part of the soil stack was asbestos. Yeah, you absolutely could do. So yeah, it could be everywhere. Ian, we've got another question.
Yeah, I've got a question actually, which is what is the most common mistakes that you see developers make when it comes to asbestos and contamination generally, Alec?
Yeah, I think probably one of the key ones would be kind of naivety and complacency. I think with the legislation, and I keep referring to Mike in Mike's talk from the other day. He mentioned as well, like listening to you mate down the pub, and yeah, I think listening to sort of someone else that says, oh, you know, I used to eat asbestos, that's fine, or you know, I know that building won't have asbestos in it, you know, and I think that's probably the biggest thing we come up with is people that either kind of have the attitude that it probably won't have asbestos, or well, I've never been caught before, so I'll probably be fine. You know, it's with asbestos, it's pretty serious stuff. You've got, you know, the serious health implications and pretty nasty asbestos. You know, incurable mesothelioma, which is a very kind of nasty disease and incurable disease, and you know, not a nice way to go. And then you've also got the legislative side of things as well, which, you know, the HSE are there's kind of more and more cases, you know, where the HSE are catching people out, you know, and there can be pretty big fines as well as custodial sentences. So it's a pretty sort of serious thing to get wrong. I think assuming as well that if you're doing it on a you know, just doing your own flip or development, that because you're not a big company or a big building company, that it doesn't apply to you. It does. You've got kind of a little bit more leeway and protection if you're purely doing it privately. Then your contractors are going to have, it's going to be more on their shoulders to make sure they're complying. If you're doing it in your own name, if you're doing it under a limited company as an SPV, then the legislation applies to you, and you know, the HSE will come after you personally if anything is done incorrectly and anyone is exposed to asbestos materials.
Fantastic.
That's one.
Good
Yeah,
advice.
that's one of the main one. I think the other one we touched on already, I'd say, would be the phasing of the works. So people, a big mistake is leaving surveys too late as well. So it's making sure you're doing the right one at the right time, and yeah, talking to us as early as possible to find out what you need to do and when.
And Alec, I presume that if you do leave the survey too late, and let's just say you go around last minute and you open things up and find that there is a whole load of stuff, basically everybody evacuates until it's all sorted out. That's pretty much the case, isn't it?
It can be. It depends what it is and where. So if it's any material in sound condition, you know, if where we've exposed it, it's not in a condition where it's going to be releasing fibres and causing potential exposures, then depending on what you're doing, you could potentially get on works with works in another part of the building. So we would help clients manage it in that way and help them to kind of factor in looking at removal of materials while getting on with something else. They might just have to revise the schedule slightly and leave that section alone. So hopefully, you know, that may be the case. But yeah, no, there's certainly, we've seen many cases where, you know, a building's going to be demolished next week, and you know, we open up the floor and there's just a load of thermal pipe insulation through all of the floor voids and what have you. So there's literally nothing they can do then until that's all removed. So they've then got that big delay.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Couple of questions here. Anthony said, can the vendor allow you to carry out asbestos intrusive survey once you exchange contract but before completion? Anthony, I think I can answer that one. Yeah, in simple terms, if you negotiate that shouldn't be a problem because you have exchanged. Obviously, you're going to buy. The only difference there is if that building's still occupied, you've just got to think about that and maybe some logistics around that. But hopefully that answers that one. Charlotte's put a quick question here. Just a quick answer, Alec, on this one. She says, when is the earliest it was used? So any buildings before a certain time would be okay. So just first of all, quick question. What was the earliest date that asbestos was used in this country?
Well, actually, the Romans used it in candle wicks, so it was actually used sort of, you know, where it's been used for a very long time. That, you know, the properties of asbestos as a fireproof material been used for a long time.
Excellent. So anything BC, we're pretty much okay then.
Yeah.
I think what I'd say there, Charlotte, so this is used before Roman times, but of course, I think what Alex might go on to say, and sorry, Alex, I just cut across here, but just to finish off, it would be that it could be used, you know, although it could be a building several hundred years old, it could subsequently have had work done on it in that time up and prior to 2000. So it could have asbestos in it. So you've got to be careful.
Exactly. Yeah, the biggest periods of use, so the buildings you want to watch out for where it was prolifically used, either because the building was constructed within that time, or as Richie said, they could have had a refurb and anything could have been added to those buildings, was the 50s. So 50s through to the mid to late 80s for the high risk materials, and through to 99. But yeah, anything from sort of 50s onwards would be your kind of key to look out for.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Excellent. Anthony says thanks for his answers on there. So Jonas says it's moving over now to Japanese knotweed. So let's get a few questions on this before we finish. He says, why is Japanese knotweed an issue, and how can I spot it?
Yeah, so it's a completely different kettle of fish to asbestos. So with asbestos, you've got the legislation from the health, you know, that the legislation's there, and all the guidance is there to protect health, and because of the damage it can do to human health. With knotweed, it's an invasive, fast-growing weed, fast-growing plant species that generally causes damage to buildings and building fabric. It's a very, very tough kind of hardy material. It sort of grows in a series, like a network of you know, below the ground, and very, very quickly. So it spreads out over a very large area, and the new shoots from that can sort of very forcibly work its way up through concrete slabs, through brickwork, and through property, and then force that building fabric apart. So it can cause, you know, over time, fairly significant structural damage to the property. So, and you know, because of that reason, because it's so fast growing, it's so invasive on land, but it also causes the damage to the property. That's where the issue lies, and it's different. As I say, the legislation is different. You know, it's not illegal to have it in place or keep asbestos, keep the knotweed in place on your site. But where it becomes a problem is when you knowingly, or when you, or not even knowingly really, which is kind of with all of these things, is where it's important to have checks and surveys and know what you've got on your land. But where you let that knotweed to go outside of your site and into neighbouring properties and land, you can then, you know, be found at fault by the owners of that neighbouring sites for allowing that invasive weed to come out of your sites and into theirs. So you've got those two aspects really, is that, and also the damage it can do to your own property.
How can you spot it? That's that question that Joan has asked, and Raj has asked a similar question in here. I mean, what does this stuff look like? How would we recommend it?
Yeah, should have had a picture really, shouldn't I? I think if you Google it, there's lots online to click. Just type not Japanese knotweed into Google and click on images. But you've got quite a long shoot, and then alternate kind of leaves, quite sort of elongated oval leaves. That yeah, it's fairly hard to describe without any pictures. So probably
yeah.
I quite like that. I wanted Alex to describe what Japanese knotweed looks like without pictures, but I guess there again, for Jonah and for Raj in here, contact Alex, contact someone like Alec out there, and they'll come and have a look and see what they can say. Ian, what else we got there?
We got a comment from Charlie, actually. I've heard that Japanese knotweed can take up to 5 years to treat, and that homes that have it can be unmortgageable. Is that your experience, Alec?
Yeah, that's right. So if it's treated, then it can be sort of, you know, chopped back down to the base, and they'll chemically treat the knotweed if you're leaving what's below the ground in situ, and then that will need to be monitored over that period of several years by that company that comes and does the treatment. So they'll put a warranty against that as long as everything's done properly, and they're able to come and do those follow-up checks sort of over the period that they need to do that. Certainly some lenders are going to be a bit twitchy, so it's going to reduce your options. So as with any sort of slightly more quirky properties or issues with properties, then there's going to be some lenders that don't like certain things. Generally, if it's been properly treated and you've got that certificate, then you're going to be able to get a mortgage, so it wouldn't necessarily be an issue. One issue a client has recently is they brought us in a property in London, and it's a sort of typical kind of London terrace, so 3-story terrace commercial sort of shop, flats above, and they've got a rear yard that's sort of hemmed in by the neighbouring properties, kind of all three sides, and they've got planning permission to build out sort of all the way through the depth of that land, sort of right to the back, and rebuild that into a full block of flats. And they contacted us and said, "Oh, we've been told that knotweed's been mentioned out in the backyard a couple of times. We'd just like to get that checked and make sure it's whether it is or isn't, and look at what we need to do." So we went and had a look, and it was knotweed. So you could see they've got a slab in the back, and there's different areas where you could see the shoots coming up. So you can just see that it's filled the whole area, because there's 4 or 5 points on that slab in different areas, basically covering the whole thing, where it's pushed its way up, broken the concrete and pushed its way up through. And the issue there for them potentially, which could have been a huge issue, is they're looking to develop that. All of that is going to get dug out and covered up. So, and it's all going to be built on. So you can't then treat that and have it monitored for several years because you wouldn't be able to develop it out for that period until all of those kind of follow-up checks have been done. So the only other option then is, rather than treating it, is to dig out the whole root system. So with that, you need to go down to 3 meters, or approximately 3 meters, or depending on what you find during those remedial works, and of the whole area, that full extent. So that's a significant amount of spoil and land coming out, and also cost-wise, that's all to go as contaminated waste. So if you've got knotweed, live knotweed growth kind of within that soil, like with any other contamination, heavy metals, PCBs, or broken asbestos in the soil, that's all got to go as contaminated waste, which costs a lot more than standard spoil. So it's not a cheap thing to get rid of.
Wow.
And you're taking out tons and tons and tons of stuff. Luckily, in this instance, luckily for them, their planning permission included a full basement level, so they were digging it all out anyway. So actually, yes, they got a higher cost to dispose of the spoil, but actually, it's not a case that they were just digging foundations. It was they were going down to best part of 5 meters anyway. So all their plans are ready to remove that. So by luck and by chance, that what was being done kind of got them out of that. But again, kind of highlights the potential issue if you're buying a site for a development. That's the kind of issue you could have with the other contaminants.
And I think the other thing that I'd heard, that you think it was some sort of quite exotic species, but actually I think the Victorians brought it over, didn't they, and planted it quite a lot around things like the side of railway lines and so on, because it grew so quickly. So I guess particularly if you're looking at maybe a conversion property that was, or any property that was kind of close by to things like railway lines, there's a fair chance you could come across it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been around for a long time, and it's not the only fast-growing invasive species. You've got giant hogweed and other species as well that can be an issue. So Japanese knotweed is the best known, but there are others as well. And yeah, that's right. it can be all over the place. So it's not a new thing.
Okay, Alex, I want to just jump in there if I can, because we're just running out of time. I want to just get a couple of things in. Randy from Property Investor News says that actually, there's a lot of stuff in Property Investor News in their archive. So, guys, if you're interested, get hold of Property Investor News. Maybe if you're not a subscription member, get hold of that, because they've got a lot of stuff there. Although, interestingly as well, Raj says, thanks. That was his question earlier when we were talking about knotweed and stuff and identifying it. He says, best to get the experts in to check and not be a Scrooge. I quite like that. So don't worry about what it looks like. Get the experts in. And he says, A-team, you get better. We're the A-team, by the way, Alec, and you could join this with the name of Alec because you have got an A in it, so that could work. Alec, I want to get one very quick answer to this in, and I think because we're running over time, but I don't know if you can do a quick answer on this. Where's that question gone? It's just a slightly different spin. And guys, I know we've got a lot of questions here that we haven't managed to get in. Can you give me a very quick one-liner? And I don't know if you can do this, Alex. Quick question. What are your thoughts on converting old petrol stations? Is this a high-risk strategy in terms of contaminations? And Jules asked that. A one-sentence answer. Is it a high-risk strategy?
Yes.
One word. Guys, look, I think there's other stuff that we can answer. Yeah, Jules, I just wanted to mention that because we talked about contamination and stuff. Guys, would you like us to get Alec back again? Because there's a lot of questions we haven't answered. Give us a wave in the chat box if you would. Alex, questions up all over. Alex, would you come back again another time and answer some more questions, because we just haven't got through them all? Would you do that for us?
Yeah, no, of course, happy to. Yeah, there's certainly a couple of things that are worth discussing, like the tax relief I mentioned to you earlier, and letting people know about that. So yeah, definitely.
Yes. No,
I'll tell you what, guys, what we try and do, we've got quite a lot of guests to get back, but this particularly has been a really busy set of questions, Alex, today. We'll try and get Alex back sooner or later, maybe on one of the Tuesday evening shows. A lot of the Saturday ones are quite booked up at the moment, but maybe Alex would get to one of the Tuesday evening ones. I know he likes to go to bed early, but he might stay up for us. That we start him at 7, Alex, and get to bed by 8. Alec, can you give us some contact details if people want to get hold of you from the show?
Yeah, of course. So it's with the rebrand, I'll give you the new website, which is actually launching next week. Don't judge us on any odd typos, because it's just getting finalized. It's being finalized over the next few days. But website-wise, to take a look, and there's some resources on there, which is www.artisanenvironmental.co.uk. Then you can contact me on my email, Alec, ALEC, at artisanenvironmental.co.uk.
Can you give that email one more time?
It is Alec at artisanenvironmental.co.uk.
And what we do, everyone, we're going to put Alec's details on the show notes on YouTube, so you'll pick them up. Please have a look at that. Final question, does Alec cover Southeast and London area? Alec, how far do you go across the country?
It depends on what we're doing and the job. Generally, we'll cover the whole south of the UK. So yeah, we're really kind of West Country, across Midlands, whole of London, and into West Essex. We generally help our clients even on individual surveys and inspections across that whole thing. If you've got a portfolio, client's got a portfolio of property, we'll work nationwide as well, because we can sort of potentially do surveys through portfolios, or working our way around.
Paying the right money, guys, you go anywhere. Alec, look, much appreciated. Thanks for coming on the show, and we've taken a little bit more of your time, but thank you, and maybe we'll bring you back again. Alec, see you soon.
Right.
Cheers, Alec. Thank you.
Wow, that was good, wasn't it, Ian? Guys, look, I'm really sorry we've gone over. Did you enjoy that one, Ian? I did.
I did. There's so much. You think it's kind of like quite a niche subject, and of course it is, but it can be so critical. We've heard so many stories of people that have come a cropper on those types of things, asbestos and also contamination. And I think that's another sort of subject I think we'll tackle him more on when we get him back, because of course a lot of people looking to do conversions of industrial or commercial retail buildings, and contamination obviously can be a potential hazard there. So yeah, I think we'll grill him some more when we get him back. That was really good.
Guys, that's it for today's show. As always, please, if you've got any friends in development, anyone who's interested in property you think would enjoy this show, please do invite them. We want to grow this community. As always, reach out to as many people as possible. We enjoy doing this and we enjoy having you all on, which is great. If you're on social media, please share us. Any posts we put out there, please feel free to share all about this show as well. And of course, we've got a closed Facebook group, Business Owners Creating Wealth Through Property Development. So please connect up with us on Facebook. Our next show is on Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. So come on and fire any questions at myself and Ian on that show. And please pop in the chat box if you've enjoyed the show. It's always nice, a few final comments as we end the show. Just let us know if you've enjoyed the show. And it looks like people have. Ranjit says, thank you very much as always. Great show. Stay safe, take extra care. Ranjit from Property Investor News for one last time. Alison says, thanks, gents. Enjoy your weekend. Off to the pub or a haircut first? Tough decision, eh? Well, I think Ian's decision is almost certainly going to be a haircut. Anthony says thank you. Yvonne says thanks, Alec and A-Team. All very useful stuff. And PK says, excellent. Alec was coherent and comprehensive. He certainly was very comprehensive. Thanks, guys. Great value again from the A-Team, says Gavin. Smiley face. Thanks again, says Charla. And Trish says, that was very interesting and so important. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Have a great weekend, everyone. Nice one, guys, says Edward. And VJ says thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good Saturday. See you Tuesday evening. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.